Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us once again. Sports Politicians Agree to Disagree. And for those who don't know, we've got shows every week. We discuss different topics in sports. Follow us on Twitter at Sports Politicking. Catch us on Facebook at Sports Politicking Presents Agree to Disagree. We'll go around the room right quick for introductions. Purvis.
Perfect Purvis by way of Tech City, Texas. Now I'm staying in Kouvola, Finland. You can find me on any social media at Perfect Purvis.
Turner.
And John Turner in Chesapeake via Newport News. You can find me on Twitter at Everybody Loves John or Luke Cage. That show is dope, by the way. Check it out on Netflix. Or on Facebook, Agree to Disagree AJT.
Lance. Or maybe not.
Muted. I see it on there.
I think he's frozen for real though. Anyway, so I'm out here living in Wilmington, North Carolina by way of Chesapeake, Virginia. You can find me on Twitter, AFlash79. Once again, follow the group on Twitter at Sports Politicking. We were going to start with Lentz. And his topic, but we will move on from that until Lentz does something.
Like a Chinese anime down there.
But why did it get frozen on that face though? Like,
that's a real good question.
Oh my God, man!
I think I'll start it off talking about college football. We'll come back to Lentz. We'll come back around. The top 5 in college football right now, the AP poll has it Alabama at 1, Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3, Clemson at 4, and Washington at 5. The coaches poll is Alabama at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, Michigan at 4, and Washington at 5. I don't personally feel like, and it may just be me, I don't feel like Ohio State is better than Clemson. I'm not 100% convinced that Washington is better than Louisville. They obviously just haven't lost. I've seen some people talk about Texas A&M being the top 5. They're currently ranked number 6. I don't like Texas A&M at all. I think that of the teams that people are talking about, they're probably the worst team. They just keep finding ways to win games. And I think that a lot can be said about that, obviously to their credit. But eventually that lucky streak's going to run out. They've come down to the wire in way too many games, in my opinion. They should have lost to Tennessee the other day and didn't. Michigan is really interesting on defense. That's the most exciting thing about them. I didn't realize that Jabril Peppers have been playing linebacker as well as defensive back. He's going to be really interesting on the next level. Yeah. I think obviously Alabama at number 1 makes a ton of sense. I would probably put Clemson at 2, like I was saying, Ohio State at 3. For me, I would do Louisville at 4, which would be crazy, I think, for a lot of people because they're a one-loss team. But I think they've played well with the exception of Duke. They played really well, and they should have beat Clemson, to be perfectly honest. And then Washington at 5. I live on the East Coast, so I haven't really seen Washington play, but I know they've put a lot of points up on a lot of people. Have any of y'all actually seen Washington play this year?
I've seen them play once, but it was just in passing with some highlights. Can't say that I've watched them play a game. Who watches the Pac-12?
I do.
That's
sometimes.
That's the knock that the Pac-12 has of getting into the playoff, is that a lot of people don't watch those games that late because of the time zone difference, and that hurts them the most. Like a lot of people are saying, like, they're not sure Washington is for real because they haven't watched them. We haven't watched them. It's too late of games to watch. And then when you watch the highlights, I mean, they're highlights. You're not going to be able to tell much about it. So that also has got to be true for the playoff selection community and the AP coaches. Like, they're not sitting there staying up the next day to watch this team play Pac-12 action. But
Well, that's the
Pac-12
problem.
has some, yeah.
That's a problem. If that's your job, okay, we do this pod, so yes, technically it's our job too. But nobody's paying us for this yet, so it's not our job to necessarily keep up with Washington. Although if you're a college football fan, you should be diligent and watch them. But that's their job. So if they're getting hyped and they're a legitimately good team, and I would assume that they are because they're number 7, why wouldn't people be watching them?
Look at it.
I've actually been watching them play. They have a legit team. I started watching them because when they played Stanford is when I really started paying attention to them, because I was sitting there watching. I was like, okay, let me see what McCaffrey got. See what he's going to do this week. They're going against a legit team now. Maybe they'll be able to stop him. And they did. They shut him down. Had him to 49 yards total yards, not just rushing, 49 total yards, which was huge at the time. But of course, the next week it happened again. But they're legit. I have stayed up and watched them simply because, like AJT said, if you're a college fan, you're going to watch. I'm a college junkie, so I stayed up to watch those Pac-12 games. And that, like you said, that's been an issue even when USC was in their heyday, that people didn't really see USC play because they played so late. So, but Washington is legit. I don't know if I have them. I would put them in the same realm as like a Wisconsin, who took Michigan and Ohio State to the wire. They're a really good team, except they have more explosive offense than Wisconsin. So I think they're legit top 5 team. I don't know about top 4 yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that the playoffs are set up, it's still the top 4, right?
Top 4.
It's still the top 4. Yeah. I was looking at the rankings, and I actually agree with you, Alan. I don't know why Louisville isn't up there, because they lost to Clemson. I don't understand. If you, because that's the knock on some of the teams in college.
I think it's that Duke game they played. That's why they went down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because they say, you as a coach, and you get to schedule basically more or less who you want. Obviously, it's money and venue and things like that involved. But if you schedule your games against the best teams, that was at that time, that was a 3-5 matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Why should Louisville be punished for losing to the number 3 team with the Heisman Trophy candidate and NFL talent all on the field? I don't understand that. And then if other teams aren't scheduling their games against the best teams, I thought the playoff system was supposed to eliminate what the BCS couldn't do. But I don't know. It doesn't.
It does. It does, because the college football playoff rankings aren't out yet. Right now, it's just the AP rankings and the coaches poll. It's not the I don't really pay attention to them until week 8 or week 9 when their first rankings for the college playoffs come out, and that's when they come.
Okay.
I think you got to look at it. Okay, everything we're talking about now is about getting to the playoffs. So you're thinking, who are the top 4 teams? We got 3 teams in there that we all know, we're putting them in the playoffs. We're putting Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. We're saying those are playoff teams. So basically everyone else is fighting for the 4th spot. And right now you're trying to decide, is it this Big Ten team of Michigan, who a lot of people have seen, or is it this Pac-12 of Washington, who a lot of people haven't seen? And like you said, Turner, for the people that are ranking them, yeah, it's their job, but there's a lot that goes into it outside of people actually watching the games. And a lot of it is that hype. That hype will get you in or out of it. Louisville has played really good, but they played a close game to Duke in the ACC when people don't think Duke is as good as some of these other teams, which is actually unfair to Duke, because Duke is a good quality team. And
they've been competitive for years.
Duke plays well in their conference because they scheme for their opponents. So they play teams tough. They might not win. They might not win outside of their conference because they don't see the teams enough. But they play well, but they're not getting any credit for that. And that's the thing. You got teams like Texas A&M. Texas A&M can lose to Alabama as long as they keep it close. They're still going to be in the top 10, which makes no sense when you look at what happened to Louisville and what's probably going to happen to, I think, Michigan whenever they play Ohio State. But that's later on. Buckeyes going to win that. But those type of things play into it when you're picking those top 4. Right now, I feel good that we got at least 3 teams that everybody feels comfortable with. But I'm like Lentz. I don't really fret or even sweat about like how the teams are ranked right around 5 through 7 right now because it's the AP poll and the coaches poll. Once the college football, they'll put a little bit more emphasis on who teams are playing, and like Turner said, they're actually gonna watch the games. The playoff committee, I think they actually have to watch the games a lot more closely than the coaches and stuff.
Yeah, and I think my main reason why I don't pay attention to the rankings right now is because majority of it is based off of preseason rankings, which I hate. You can't rank in the preseason. These are college kids, man. That's stupid. You're going off of what they did. True, yeah, because all these you got three lost SEC teams in the top 15. That's ridiculous. Get the hell out of here.
Gosh.
One note going back right quick about Duke. I think it's really interesting. People, you kind of look down on Duke program because they've been a basketball school for so long, but they were in the ACC championship 3 years ago. Like this isn't some team that's never done anything in football. It's always been terrible, always going to be terrible. They're competitive, like you said, every week. So for them to play Louisville well, to me, says more about them than it does Louisville. Obviously, we don't have any of the playoff rankings yet, but it's sad to me that if we were to start it today, that Louisville would be on the outside looking in. Granted, some of that may be a location bias because I've seen Louisville games and I haven't seen Washington. Who's to say that Washington isn't actually better than Louisville? The reality is, like you said, a lot of people have seen Louisville, watched Louisville, and know more about Lamar Jackson than they do about anybody on Washington's team. I had to actually Google it a couple weeks ago to actually know the name of Washington's quarterback. Everybody knows who Lamar Jackson is if you watch college football at this point. And that star power is kind of going to play in their favor when you're talking about casual fans. Obviously, I don't know that the people that are going to be making the playoff rankings will feel that same way. If Washington keeps winning now, if Washington or Michigan tend to lose a game here, I think that's going to go really well for Louisville. Once we get to the playoff rankings, I think Louisville will jump over Texas A&M if they don't get an advantage for being in the SEC. I think being undefeated in the SEC is one thing, but they don't look good doing it. And I think when it really comes down to it, we start looking at the playoffs, they're going to kind of come back down to come to earth is what I'm trying to say. Even though I don't think they were highly ranked going into the season either. I'm
still confused how West Virginia is undefeated and they're not a top 10 at all. I think I agree.
Because of preseason rankings.
I agree that you got teams like Wisconsin with 2 losses and Louisville with 1 loss, like even Houston with 1 loss. I agree that those teams might be better than West Virginia, but at this point in the season, what you've seen and what they've done, you got to go off of that, not off of what you expected to happen from the teams and how you think it's going to finish. West Virginia is undefeated and isn't ranked in the top 10. There's not more than 10 undefeated teams right now. So how are they not in there? That's just it's a weird system.
I don't necessarily think you should just go by undefeated teams because
but they're a power 5 team though. I can see it, like you got Boise State not ranked in the top 10. They're not in the Power 5 conference, but they're in the Big 12. That's supposed to be one of the big boys. They're undefeated. They're still in the Big 12. Why do they get no respect?
Because it's West Virginia, and the Big 12 is probably the worst conference right now. Worst conference right now.
Like if you're not Oklahoma in the Big 12, you have to go undefeated to get a shot at this playoff.
I mean, the reality is they've played Kansas State, BYU, Youngstown State, Missouri, and Texas Tech.
I'm not trying to like. I believe, like I said, I named like 3 or 4 teams that are better than them, and maybe they shouldn't be in the top 10. But it's ridiculous that they're not even close to being in the top 10 because of who they are in the conference they're in. And you have these other teams who they play good games, but you can't fault a team for winning every game. It's college football. You got to show up and win. you got Louisville played Duke close. Duke is supposedly not that good, yet you're still saying that even though they faltered against Duke and almost lost, and they actually did lose against Clemson, that's better than just lining up and beating whoever the fuck you're playing against. Excuse my language. And that's what West Virginia is doing. They can't help their schedule. Like you said earlier, Turner, schedules are made in advance. There's a lot of things that go into the schedule outside of just saying we want to play the best teams. This schedule was probably made 4 years ago. What they're going to do, they line up, they play. They won their games. Why can't they be rewarded for being undefeated?
But you can't punish teams who just schedule better opponents too. And in college, you have more control over your schedule than someone than the NFL does. Pick teams in the NFL, they're subject to whatever the NFL schedule maker says. In college, you can schedule games against the teams that you think will be good. Now, obviously, we don't know if they'll be good, like you said, 3 or 4 years down the line.
Think about it like this, though. If I'm in the Big 12 and I know that my conference is pretty good, so I make my schedule, I schedule teams for 4 years from now, expecting that when I play in my conference, that the conference is going to be so brutal that it can get me out. But now they're getting there, and the schedule shows up, and they're like, crap, we got cupcakes because we thought our conference was going to be stronger. Well, it's not as strong as it was.
Which is crazy. Which is crazy when people talk about the Big 12 because
it doesn't help them now.
The SEC does the exact same thing with their schedule, and what you just said, Purvis, is the excuse people use. Well, the SEC is so tough that when you play each other, it's more competitive than playing outside of conference. So the Big 12, you got to remember, like you said, it's 3-4 years ago they're going off of. TCU, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor were all good teams. Texas wasn't, but it's still Texas, so people will pay attention. But you had six legit teams and 4 years ago who were good, so you didn't need outside conference. Like people say nothing about Alabama playing Chattanooga, Tennessee, Chattanooga. They don't say nothing about them playing Georgia State or Alabama State, but they'll talk about the Big 12 teams. This is the reason why they don't come. It's because they highly rate these SEC teams in the preseason because, they got this talent, they got this talent. And then you look at the end of the year, and that talented team has 6-7 losses, but they're still top 25. So they don't pay attention to things like that.
I don't disagree with that. Alabama's schedule, they played the 20-ranked team, 19, 16, 9s, and then they played 6.
In the SEC.
Those rankings are preseason. Like the SEC is half of the SEC is ranked in the top 25 before the season starts, but you really don't know how good they are. And
LSU was supposed to be the top team. LSU was supposed to be the top contender to Alabama, and now they're one of the worst teams in the SEC. That's how easily it can change that fast. But because the SEC is so heavily ranked, it's like, okay, well, we think this team's going to be good just because they're in the SEC.
Yeah.
I think that's true, but that's also kind of why I liked Virginia Tech's approach for so many years when they were more relevant. Not to say they're not relevant now. Trying to play teams that were going to be in the top 5 instead of playing cupcake teams, going out there and challenging teams like USC, who they played I think 2 or 3 times over the course of 5 or 6 years, not knowing what your conference schedule is going to be like. Even though they were playing in the ACC, still not knowing, who's in the Atlantic Division or whatever that's going to be good when we play. Let's go ahead and play a championship team. So even if we losing that game is better than beating Norfolk State by 45 points. And I think that's one thing that gets kind of overlooked when you're scheduling those cupcake games. You can survive, honestly, a early season loss against a good team as long as that team keeps being good and you keep winning. If you play,
which is faulty logic in itself, but
I agree.
First college football, Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech, and then Virginia Tech tanked the season. Yeah. We got no credit for that, but a good win at the end of the season in Big Ten play got us into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think that scheduling changes now with the advent of the playoffs, because before they were scheduling these cupcakes because in the BCS system, if you had a loss, you had a loss. The computer system didn't rank it, well, you lost to a top 10 team. They just scheduled it, they just saw it as a loss. So teams were afraid to play bigger schools, because if you catch an L in the beginning of the season, whether it's the first game or the last game, you're more than likely going to be out the playoffs. Like, people forget that it was 2007, I believe. Oklahoma got smashed 55-19 in the Big 12 championship, and still went to the title game and got smashed again by Florida. So, like, it's times where you can get in there. It just depends on everything else. It's a microcosm of everything, how these other teams are playing. Right now, there's like 7 undefeated teams in the nation, and Louisville is ahead of 3 of those teams. You still got Baylor and Nebraska and West Virginia behind them. So Louisville will be able to get in, but it's that what the system has done is they've told everybody, hey, if you're playing cupcake schedule, then we're going to look at it and see who you play, and be like, okay, we're not going to rank you that high. That was the issue with TCU and Baylor a couple of years back. Was, well, you got these wins, but you're playing sorry teams. You need to up your schedule. Now other teams are seeing that, like, okay, we need to schedule these tougher out of conference opponents, get these Power 5 teams in, and most teams now we're getting that one team in there. You're getting Wisconsin going to LSU, or LSU going to Wisconsin to play. So it's things like that it's changing now, where before it was, well, just schedule cupcakes, because if you get your L, your season's over with.